So, before I begin properly, I'd like to take a moment to thank some of the many people who have shaped and taught me over the years. To my classmates, for being the talented, funny, amazing people you are. For being my friends. Thank you. To all the teachers of Coram Deo, for investing in us over the years, for teaching us to love those things which we ought to love. Thank you. To Mr. Howell, especially, for encouraging my curiosity, for letting me write papers on the most obscure of topics, for always being willing to chat about anything from post-minimalist music to Phoenician shipwrecks. Thank you. And finally, to my parents, for encouraging me, supporting me, and always pushing me to do my best, even amid the craziness of this senior year. Thank you. Without you all, I would not be standing here today. What is it that we have here at Coram Deo? Why a classical education? Why any of this? Why are we here? As it happens, I've had to answer these very questions for several college interview panels over the past few months. One of the best ways to understand something is to explain it to someone else. And in describing to those interviewers why my classical education matters, I've come to better appreciate that education myself. Through that process, I've learned a few truths that I'd like to share with you tonight. Classical education is like a book. Not just any book, though. It's one of those books that, when you read it for the first time, you might think, why this book? This definitely isn't worth my time. I think we've all had books like that, and I think I can speak for at least the senior guys when I say that ours was definitely Pride and Prejudice. But the thing about those stories, the ones that someone makes you read because they're good for you, not because you want to, the thing about those stories is that because they challenge you, they also change you. Once you've disciplined yourself to read that difficult book, you understand just a little bit better why someone told you to read it. It widens your perspective on reality, and you start to see things just a bit differently, in ways that you never appreciated before. And the next time you read or discuss that book, you understand it a bit better, maybe even actually enjoy it. Classical education is that book. When you're in the middle of it, it can seem frustrating at times, pointless even. But the truth of the matter is, that's a book you're reading for a reason. Every literature paper, every tedious Latin exercise, or difficult history test is ultimately there to make you a better, wiser person. A person who not only succeeds academically, but also one who thinks broadly and critically, who asks the important questions, and looks for a deeper meaning in life than the merely physical. That's the other thing about this particular book. The most important thing you'll learn from it, from your classical education, is not a fact. Not a statistic, not a date or a piece of data, not even a law or an equation. The most important things you'll learn here at Coram Deo will be ideas. Ideas, far more than any of those other types of information I just mentioned, are what define the meaning in anything we do. Consider any subject you like: science, literature, history. Knowing the literal physical facts and figures of that discipline can tell you what the discipline is about, but no more. If I know, for example, that Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, that's of course a true fact, but that alone doesn't tell me why I should care. On the other hand, if I read Lord of the Rings and appreciate the ideas that undergird its actual text, its aesthetic excellence, its implicit morality, its Christian themes, the book impacts me far more meaningfully. In the same way, classical education teaches us to understand reality not merely as data in a spreadsheet, as modern culture would view it, but also reality's underlying significance, its aesthetics, and epistemology and morality. Classical education, as I've already said, is like a book. And that book offers you a trove of immensely valuable information. Keep reading to the end, and you'll find that it'll teach you not just the what of life, but also the why of the philosophies and worldviews behind it. Of course, classical education would be a fairly boring book if it were just a self-help volume intended to make you a better person. Good books also have a story, and classical education is among the best. The best part about this particular story, though, is that for all of you students, you're not just reading it, you're actually inside it, one of countless characters in God's great story of history. This metaphorical book of your education isn't some tedious novel that you just skim through once, write a paper on, and then set down and never read again. No, it's more like a journal that's been partway filled with incredible wisdom by everyone from Solomon to Socrates to your parents. And at the end of that journal is your experience, your time in school. Plenty of blank pages for you, the character, to live out the next part of the story written for you. So, like every character in a book, you now have a story ahead of you, and you only have one responsibility. Make that story a good one. Your story, you see, is your education and your life. So take those pages, fill them with the best tale you possibly can. Make every moment count. Take that extra class you're really interested in, or do some bonus learning on your own. Have a debate at lunch. Start a club. Because ultimately, in doing these things, we glorify God, the ultimate storyteller, the one inside whose story we are living even now. Since God is the greatest author and we are his characters, we glorify him when we live the best stories we can. In fact, although we can certainly glorify God by singing hymns or memorizing Bible verses, we can also glorify him by doing trigonometry or memorizing dates, provided that we approach all these things with the proper attitude. Don't think of your education as just dry facts or hard tests. The goal here is to understand, to appreciate, to engage deeply with reality, both physical and metaphysical, to learn to love God's story and the world in which it unfolds. So, do your math to the glory of God. Don't just skim your history, your science, your literature. Dig deeper. Look for real understanding rather than mere surface-level knowledge. Glorify God by knowing and valuing every aspect of the world he's created. I've told you, classical education is like a book. Some of you may also know that I enjoy giving people book recommendations. And I'd like to end by recommending a different kind of book to you all. This metaphorical book of classical education is among the best you can read. It has things to teach you that you'll find nowhere else. True, like my friends and I once felt about Pride and Prejudice, it may not feel like it's worthwhile while you're still in the middle of the process. But looking over that classical education from where I now stand, I can tell you with certainty that no other schooling could have prepared me better for life as a Christian and a thinking individual in our culture today. It will do the same for you if you truly want it to. Read the book. You'll find it's worth every moment. Thank you.